While I was sitting and crying, trying to get through our divorce, he was out celebrating his wedding. At 60 years old, he married a girl who could easily have been a granddaughter to both of us. She was only 24. The biggest blow for me was that he invited my relatives to his second wedding, my sister and her husband, my cousin, my old but wealthy father, as well as my son and daughter. I hoped until the very last moment that they would refuse, but I saw how happy they were that day when they came to congratulate him. I called the man who demolishes old houses to build new ones on their sites and ordered, destroy it immediately. When my ex-husband returned to our estate, where he had planned to spend his wedding night, he froze. Instead of the house, there was an empty lawn. He became the first groom whose wife left him on his wedding night. But that was only the beginning of my revenge. My name is Charlotte, and I'm the woman who demolished her own marriage house on her ex-husband's wedding night. Yes, that was me. 60 years old, a fresh divorcee, and apparently one phone call away from becoming a natural disaster. People love to gasp when they hear the story. Oh my God, Charlotte, how could you? Sweetheart, the real question is, how could I not? I was 59 when it all finally snapped, but if you really want to understand what I did, you have to see the years that came before, how carefully I built the very house I later buried. We married at 22, two idiots with big eyes and empty pockets, standing in a courthouse in a borrowed suit and a dress my mama stitched on her old singer. His name is Daniel, though these days I mostly call him the groom with no house. We built everything together, not metaphorically, actually built. We slept for years on a second-hand mattress on the floor while we poured every spare cent into that estate. At first, it was just 10 acres and a sad little farmhouse with a roof that leaked on the good days and poured on the bad ones. On weekends, we climbed ladders with paint-splattered hair and blisters on our hands, joking that one day this place would look like the cover of a magazine. And damn it, one day it did. By 40, we had a luxurious house, as the real estate agent called it. Big wraparound porch, stone fireplace, a kitchen with a marble island so big it could land a small plane, 2 staircases, 2 entrances, and a driveway that curved like it knew it was pretty. We raised our son and daughter in that house, taught them how to ride bikes on that driveway, built a treehouse out back that still smells like sawdust and summer. Later, we had 3 grandchildren, 3 running through those hallways with sticky fingers and gap-toothed smiles, leaving cracker crumbs and crayons like confetti. And me? I was the engine in the background. I fed him. I waited for him. I kept the world spinning. Every morning, I packed his lunch, sandwich, chips, a little note when I felt sentimental, which was more often than I'll admit. I ironed his shirts. I filled his thermos with coffee that I ground myself. When he pulled into the driveway after work, the porch light was on and dinner was hot. I knew the weight of his favorite mug, the smell of his cologne, the exact way his footsteps sounded in the hall upstairs when he thought I was asleep and he didn't want to wake me. Charlotte, you're the heart of this house, he used to say, kissing my cheek. I believed him. I believed in him. That was my first mistake. The day the first crack appeared, it came wearing lipstick and a nervous grin. It was my friend Lisa who brought me the news. Lisa and I have been friends since high school, the kind of woman who tells you when you've got spinach in your teeth and also when your life is hanging off a cliff. She came over one afternoon, short of breath, without calling first. That alone should have been my warning. Lisa always calls. I need to talk to you, she blurted, stepping into my kitchen. Now, my kitchen is my little kingdom. Light blue cabinets, copper pots hanging over the island, a vase of fresh flowers from the yard. I was stirring a pot of chicken soup that smelled like childhood and Sundays. What happened? I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. She looked at me the way you look at a woman standing on train tracks. Char, I saw Daniel yesterday. Well, I hope so, I laughed. He lives here. She didn't smile. At a restaurant. With a young woman. I snorted. He has co-workers, you know. He doesn't live in a monastery. Lisa pressed her lips together. He was at La Lumiere. I paused. La Lumiere isn't a work lunch kind of place. It's dim lighting, $40 plates, and a wine list that has its own personality. It's where people go to propose, cheat, or apologize for cheating. Maybe he was meeting a client, I said. My voice came out calm, steady, like I'd rehearsed it. They were sitting on the same side of the booth. Char, she whispered. His arm was around her. She had her head on his shoulder. The spoon slipped from my fingers and clanged against the pot. I felt my heart try to climb out of my chest, but I pushed it back down where it belonged. No, I said firmly. You must have seen it wrong. Some angle, some shadow. He wouldn't do that. Not Daniel. I forced a laugh that tasted like dust. Anyway, if it were something like that, I'd know. We've been together our whole lives. I'd feel it. Lisa reached for my hand. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I know, I said. But you are hurting me. So let's knock it off. I spent the rest of the day defending him like a lawyer on commission. To Lisa, to myself, to the empty house. That night, when he came home smelling faintly of expensive perfume and red wine he didn't have, I just hugged him harder. You all right? He asked. Fine. I lied into his shirt. The next day, I asked him about it. But I didn't go in like an interrogator. No, I took the wife approach, soft, joking, pretending I wasn't holding my breath. We were at dinner. I'd made his favorite meatloaf, mashed potatoes, roasted carrots. I watched him eat like he always did, methodical, focused, like the food owed him rent. So, I said lightly, how's your girlfriend from La Lumiere? He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. My what? Your girlfriend, I repeated teasingly. The young one, dark hair, long legs. Lisa saw you yesterday. I told her it had to be a work thing. She thought you were on a date. I rolled my eyes. You know how dramatic she is. He slowly set the fork down. The sound of metal on china might as well have been a gunshot. That wasn't a date, he said. Of course not. I smiled. I told her, Daniel doesn't do that. He stared at me, and for the first time in 37 years, I realized I didn't know what that look meant. She's my secretary, he said. Relief flooded me so fast I almost laughed. Oh, thank God. See? I knew it. I told her it was some kind of work meeting. I shook my head. That woman loves a scandal. He inhaled deeply. His hands were shaking. Charlotte, he said quietly, it wasn't a work meeting. The room shrank. What? He wouldn't look at me. I've been seeing her for a while. The word while broke something in my ribs. For how long? I whispered. He finally looked up, and his eyes were dry, his voice disturbingly calm. About a year. I sat back. A year. A year of me packing his lunches, folding his socks, making his favorite Sunday waffles while he was sneaking out in a clean shirt to go lie to someone else. I expected tears, hysteria, maybe a dramatic fainting spell like in the movies. Instead, I felt very, very awake. And you're telling me this because? I asked. Because, he said, I want a divorce. Just like that. Not I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. A transaction request. I stared at the man I'd walked beside for decades, the man whose name is on every mortgage payment and every Christmas card, and realized he was looking at me like I was an item on a list. You're leaving me for your secretary, I repeated slowly, to make sure I understood the math. Yes. How old is she? He swallowed. 24. 24. My eyebrows shot up. Good Lord, Daniel. She's young enough to be our granddaughter. He had the decency to wince. I'm not trying to hurt you, Charlotte. Well, you're doing a bang-up job anyway. He pushed his plate away. The estate is big, he began, like he was announcing a business plan. I will not chase you away. There are 2 entrances here. We can divide the house into 2 parts. If you want, I will hire you as our housekeeper. He actually smiled, like this was generous. You've done so well with it all these years. I'll pay you 3 times the market wage. It sounded like mockery dipped in courtesy. I laughed. Not a sweet, broken little laugh either. A sharp, ugly one that made him flinch. You're going to let me stay in my own house as your maid? How noble of you. I won't take the house from you, he said. We built it together. It belongs to both of us. I looked him dead in the eye. But I will, I said. He blinked. What? I will take it, I repeated calmly. You just don't know it yet. The divorce was quick, efficient, like he'd been planning it for a while. I signed my name so many times it stopped looking like my name. Lawyers, papers, numbers, splits of accounts and properties we'd once discussed over shared pizza on moving night. He got the business, the investments, the polished future he imagined with his secretary turned princess. I got half the estate on paper, but all of the memories in my bones. A month after the divorce was finalized, he married her. 60 years old. Standing at the altar with a 24-year-old in white lace and diamonds he bought with money I helped earn. He didn't even have the decency to wait until my pillow cooled. The night before the wedding, my phone lit up with calls from my family. My sister, my cousin, my son, my daughter. They all said the same things. We're on your side, Charlotte. Of course we're not going. We'd never do that to you. We're with you till the end." I wanted to believe them, so I did. That was my second mistake. On the day of the wedding, I sat in front of my mirror with swollen eyes and a heart like wet concrete. Then something inside me snapped into place. I pulled out an old wig from Halloween, dark, straight, nothing like my usual soft curls. I added big sunglasses, the kind that make your face look smaller and your problems look farther away. A plain dark dress, no perfume, no lipstick. I looked like a woman who'd come to watch, not to be seen. "Let's see who you really are when you think I'm not looking," I told my reflection. The church was full, flowers everywhere, a string quartet playing something expensive. I slipped into the back row like a ghost and watched my old life unfold without me. Then I saw them. My sister in the front pew, wearing the pearl necklace I lent her 10 years ago and never got back. Her husband beside her. My cousin, laughing softly with a champagne flute already in his hand. My father, old but upright, sitting proudly on the groom's side. And there on the aisle were my son and daughter, smiling, clapping, beautifully dressed. Every single one of them who had called me in tears the night before, swearing they wouldn't come. My throat burned. My hands went cold. I watched as my ex-husband took his vows, voice strong, back straight, eyes shining as he spoke to his new bride. "I promise to love you, to cherish you, to be faithful to you until my last breath." He said it like he meant it, like he had never promised anything to anyone before, like the 40 years with me had just been a rehearsal. Sometimes with me, he forgot to even say "I love you" at all. He'd throw it over his shoulder on his way out the door, or mumble it half asleep. But this girl, he poured love all over her like champagne. Sitting in that pew, I realized the most painful part of all this wasn't that he loved her. It was the sudden clarity that he had never really loved me the way I thought he did. I had been the scaffolding for his life. Useful, necessary, invisible. Once the structure was finished, when they kissed and the church erupted in applause, I didn't cry. I walked out. By the time they were cutting cake at the reception, I was on my phone. The man who demolishes old houses for new builds has a voice like gravel and diesel engines. "Yeah," he answered. "Good evening," I said calmly, standing on my front porch, staring at the house I'd scrubbed, painted, polished, and loved for decades. "I'd like to schedule a demolition." He whistled low. "You on a timeline, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. Tonight?" He laughed. "Lady, that's not how this works. I'm booked. I'll pay double your usual rate." I cut in. "Cash. You've seen the estate. 10 acres, big main house, guest house, pool house. I want everything gone. Not a trace. Not a nail. Not a brick. Not a single stone. Just a clean lawn by dawn." Silence. "Is this legal?" he finally asked. "Fully," I said. "The house belongs to me. Paperwork's in my name. You can verify it before you swing a single hammer. But if you do it tonight, I'll throw in an extra 20%. I could hear him thinking. Money, schedule, risk. Men like him understand leverage, and I was done being the only one who didn't. "Send me the address," he said at last. By midnight, the quiet country air was full of rumbling trucks and the low growl of heavy machinery. I watched from the far edge of the property, under the shade of an old oak I planted the year my son was born. The same one we used to tie balloons to for birthday parties. The crew moved like a well-rehearsed army. Walls I had scrubbed on my hands and knees cracked. Windows I'd polished with vinegar and newspapers shattered like nothing. The kitchen where I had cooked every meal exploded into dust and splinters under the teeth of the excavator. Brick by brick, room by room, they took my old life apart. I thought I would sob, collapse, scream. Instead, I felt lighter with every crash. I wasn't destroying my home. I was burying the lie that had lived inside it. By dawn, the sun rose over a perfectly clean, level stretch of earth. No house, no porch, no driveway, just a smooth, almost serene field where my life used to stand. The demolition man walked over, wiping sweat from his brow, eyes wide. "I've been doing this 30 years, he said, "and I've never seen anyone do that to their own place. He'll be back from his wedding soon," I said calmly. "I don't want him to get lost. The lawn will help." He stared at me like I was dangerous. Good. People are much more respectful when they learn that. When Daniel pulled into the driveway with his new bride that morning, still in their wedding clothes, ready to start their perfect new life together, his car rolled to a stop in front of nothing. No mansion. No porch. No front door to carry her through, just sky, grass, and a stunned silence that could have swallowed the whole county. He got out of the car slowly, like the house might suddenly reappear if he moved quietly enough. His new wife stepped out beside him, teetering in white heels, clutching her bouquet like a life raft. What is this?" she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. His face was white, his mouth opening and closing. He looked like a man who'd come home to find his entire life erased. I watched from the road, far enough that they couldn't see me, close enough to catch every second. The demolition man had done his job perfectly, not a trace left, just as I'd ordered. She turned to him, fury and fear mixing in her young eyes. "You told me this was our house," she snapped. "You said this was where we'd start our family." "It was my house," he stammered. There has to be some mistake." She pulled off her veil with shaking hands. "You're 60, she spat, "and you don't even have a house?" "I'm not starting my life with a man who can't even keep a roof over our heads." And then, right there on the morning of their first day as husband and wife, she tossed the bouquet at his chest, climbed back into the car, and slammed the door. By the time he managed to form a sentence, she had driven away, leaving him alone, in his tuxedo, on a naked lawn. He became the first groom I've ever heard of whose wife left him on his wedding night. And standing there behind that old oak, I smiled, because that, my dear, was only the beginning of my revenge. I didn't sleep that morning. Too many bulldozers, too much adrenaline, and a fresh memory of my ex-husband standing in the middle of a clean lawn like God had hit delete on his life. Somewhere around 9 a.m., my phone started ringing. First, my sister. I let it buzz until it cut off. Then my cousin. Then my daughter. Then my son. My father tried once, then twice. Persistent old man. They all went to voicemail. You can tell a lot about people by the message they leave when they think you might not answer. "Charlotte, honey, call me back, okay?" my sister said, voice just a little too bright. "We need to talk about the house. Something happened." "No kidding, Mom," my daughter said. I don't know what's going on, but Dad is freaking out and the house is gone and just call me, please." "Jesus, Mom, did you get robbed by a tornado?" My son tried to joke. He always did use humor when he was scared. Wonder where he learned that. My cousin, bless him, sounded hungover. "Char, what the hell did you do? Call me back before Dad has a heart attack." And my father, my old, rich, stubborn father, voice steady as ever. "Charlotte, I assumed this was your doing. Call me, immediately." I made myself a cup of coffee instead. I sat at the little table by the kitchen window, what was left of the kitchen in the guest house, and watched the sun climb over the empty stretch where my entire past had stood just hours ago. You'd think I'd feel ruined, homeless, broken. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Awake. Let me be clear about something. I loved my family. I still do, in some complicated, bruised way. I wiped their noses, fed them, babysat their children, hosted their birthdays and barbecues in that house. But loyalty is like a bank account, and they'd all just made a very large withdrawal. You don't tell me, "We are with you till the end," then show up dressed to the nines at my ex-husband's wedding to a 24-year-old secretary. You don't toast the man who just traded me in like a lease, and then come crying to me when the house disappears. Actions have consequences, and I was done shielding people from theirs. Around noon, I finally picked up when my sister called again. "Finally," she gasped. "Charlotte, what on earth did you have fun yesterday?" I asked. There was a pause. "Fun, at the wedding," I said pleasantly. "Nice flowers? Good food?" I heard the band was very expensive. Charlotte, listen, it wasn't like that. You just what? I leaned back in my chair. "You just went to celebrate the man who walked out on me after almost 40 years. You just went to clap and smile while he promised a child he'd be faithful, something he couldn't manage with me." She exhaled sharply. "We went for Dad. You know how he is. He insisted. And the kids wanted to see their father get married. It's complicated." "No," I said. "Complicated is trying to get red wine out of a white shirt. This is simple. Charlotte, I don't want an apology." I cut in. "I just want you to stop talking like you didn't make a choice. You did. All of you did." She went quiet. "Is it true?" she asked finally, voice small. "Did you really destroy the house?" "Technically," I said. "I hired professionals, unions and everything. Very civilized." "Why?" she whispered. Because, I said, swirling my spoon in my coffee, he told me he wouldn't take the house from me. And I promised him I'd take it from him. Despite what everyone seems to think, I'm a woman of my word. You didn't have to go that far. Oh, sweetheart, I smiled into the phone. I haven't even started. My father showed up in person that afternoon. He still drove himself, even though he really shouldn't. He stepped out of his luxury sedan in a pressed shirt and that old navy blazer he wore whenever he wanted to look in charge. He walked up to the guest house where I was packing and stopped dead when he got a full view of the empty field. My God, he muttered. You really did it. Good afternoon, Daddy, I said, folding a sweater into a box. He stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Do you have any idea how much value you just wiped off this land? That house was an altar I'd been sacrificed on for years, I said matter-of-factly. It needed to go. He frowned at the boxes. What are you doing? Packing. For where? My mother's beach house, I said. You remember? That little place on the coast you've been saying you should sell for 20 years? Good thing you never did. I'm going to live there a while, he scoffed. That shack? It's about the size of your heart, I said sweetly. I think I'll fit. He gave me that look, the one that says, control yourself, be reasonable, be small. You're overreacting, Charlotte. You went to his wedding, I replied, at our church. You watched him marry a girl younger than my daughter. You toasted them. That does not buy you a seat in my meltdown management committee. I'm his father-in-law too, he protested. Or was. It was complicated. There's that word again. I shook my head. My marriage wasn't complicated. He cheated. He left. He married her. You all went. I blew up the set. Simple. Don't be dramatic, Daddy, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I learned dramatic from you. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Why didn't you tell us? He finally asked. Why didn't you say you were going to? Because you would have tried to stop me, I said. And I didn't want to give anyone else the chance to be disappointed in me. I was busy being disappointed in all of you. He swallowed. What are you going to do now? I closed the box, taped it shut, and straightened up. Now, I said, I start over. And I reassign people to the roles they've earned. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said calmly, that you all chose Daniel over me. So from now on, when you need favors, support, emotional labor, holidays hosted, grandkids babysat, rides, money, casseroles when someone dies, call your new son-in-law. His jaw tightened. You can't just cut us off. Watch me, I said. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he did something I didn't expect. He nodded. Your mother would be proud, he said softly. Terrified, but proud. Good, I replied. I'll need at least one parent on my side. Revenge, for me, isn't about arson or poison. That's messy. And it ruins the furniture. No. My revenge is quieter, longer, more practical. First, I called my lawyer and had him draw up a new will. Every penny that was supposed to go to my son and daughter directly now had a condition attached. They would receive it in a trust controlled by me until they each completed a specific, very long, very precise list of tasks centered on taking care of me in my old age. Doctor's appointments, holiday visits, weekly phone calls, staying with me during surgeries. Hell, I even wrote in a clause that they had to memorize my favorite dessert recipe and make it for me on my birthday. They wanted to treat me like a backup character in their father's story. Fine, the sequel would be all about me. Then I wrote a letter. One letter, copied by hand for each of them, my children, my sister, my cousin, even my father, in my neatest cursive. In each letter, I didn't yell. I didn't dramatize. I simply laid out the facts like an accountant of loyalty. On this date, you promised you would not go. On this date, you went. On this date, you smiled in photos while my ex-husband pledged his eternal love to someone else. And on this date, I chose myself. I ended every letter with the same line. You didn't lose me because of what he did to me. You lost me because of what you did with it. I left the letters on their doorsteps the morning I drove away, leaving the estate hurt in a way I can't dress up. That land had seen me through every version of myself. Young bride, exhausted mother, anxious middle-aged woman, and finally, enraged almost 60-year-old demolition queen. I took one last walk across the bare yard, my feet crunching on the flattened dirt, and whispered goodbye to the ghosts of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, teenage fights, and reconciliation dinners. Then I got in my car, a sensible sedan with a sticky cup holder and a rosary my mother had left hanging from the mirror, and I drove. The beach house was 3 hours away. I rolled the windows down and let the wind destroy what was left of my carefully blow-dried hair. Somewhere along the highway, in that stretch of nothing between towns, I realized I wasn't crying. I was humming. My mother's beach house sits on a narrow strip of coast that realtors now like to call up and coming because someone built a yoga studio within a 10-mile radius. To me, it will always be what it was when I was a girl, a slightly crooked 2-bedroom shack with peeling white paint, blue shutters, and a porch that creaks like it's gossiping. When I pulled into the sandy driveway, the sight of it hit me harder than the empty field back home. The little house had a faded sign over the door, "Sea Glass Cottage." Mama hung it there when I was 12. Said it sounded fancier than "the place where we hide from your father when he's in a mood." I stepped out of the car, breathing in the salt air, the tang of the ocean, the distant crash of waves. The sound wrapped around me like an old song. Inside, dust had settled over everything, but it was the kind of dust that feels like a soft blanket, not neglect. I opened the windows, letting the wind sweep through. "Hello, old girl," I said to the house. "Looks like it's just you and me now." I spent the next few days cleaning, scrubbing, unpacking, and rediscovering. I found one of Mama's aprons hanging behind the pantry door, a stack of yellowing paperbacks by her bedside, the seashell wind chime I made in 5th grade, still hanging lopsided from a rusty nail. Every object in that house said the same thing: you belonged to someone once. You can belong again. On the 3rd night, I dragged a lawn chair onto the sand to watch the sunset. The sky bled orange into pink into purple, the water catching all of it and tossing it back like a show-off. For the first time since Daniel put down his fork and asked for a divorce, I let myself wonder not about what I'd lost, but about what I might still find. New work, new routines, new friends, maybe just peace and quiet and a good book. Love? No, that was too big to raw too soon. At least, that's what I told myself. And then, right as the sun slipped below the horizon, I heard a man's voice behind me, warm and amused. "You're in my chair, you know." I turned, squinting into the last light, and saw him. Tan skin, gray at his temples, a rough beard, bare feet, a faded t-shirt with a local marina logo. He held a fishing rod in one hand and a cooler in the other, like he'd stepped right out of a postcard for a handsome coastal widower who minds his business. "Am I?" I asked, lifting my chin. "Funny, it fits me just fine." He smiled, slow and surprised. "Well then," he said, planting his cooler in the sand and nodding toward the spot beside me, "mind if I sit in my sand next to your chair?" I should have told him to go away. I should have said I wanted to be alone. Instead, I heard myself say, "Suit yourself, stranger." But I bite. He laughed, took a seat, and stuck his rod into the sand. "My name's Jack," he said. I thought about all the names I'd been called in the last few months. Wife, ex-wife, divorcee, crazy, vengeful, dramatic. I looked at the man beside me, at the gentle confidence in his eyes, at the ocean throwing light between us, and I decided to pick my own introduction this time. "I'm Charlotte," I said, "and I just buried a house." His eyebrows rose. "Now that," Jack said, "sounds like a story I'd like to hear." "Oh, Jack, you have no idea. If you'd told me 6 months earlier that I'd be sitting on a beach beside a handsome man named Jack, sipping beer from his cooler and telling the story of how I demolished my own house like a character in a country song gone rogue, I would have asked how many margaritas you'd had. But life is funny that way. It always waits until you're freshly heartbroken, slightly unhinged, and wearing your oldest pair of flip-flops to deliver something unexpected. Jack listened to my story the way a man listens to a storm rolling in, alert, eyebrows raised, bracing for impact but not running. Every so often, he'd let out a low whistle or mutter, "Well, I'll be damned," but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he sat quietly for a long moment, watching the waves. Then he said, "Charlotte, remind me never to cheat on you." I barked out a laugh so loud it startled a gull off the shoreline. "Oh honey," I said, wiping my eyes. "At this point I'm like a retired firefighter. I've already seen the worst flames. I'm not signing up for that again." We sat there until the stars came out. I learned that Jack owned a little fishing charter business right down the beach. I learned he'd been a widower for 5 years. I learned he liked strong coffee, old guitars, and tide charts more than television. I also learned he was steady, calm, the opposite of the whirlwind my life had been. A dangerous combination for a woman who decided she'd never need romance again. When we finally said goodnight, he walked me to the path leading to Mama's house. The moon made a silver ribbon across the sand, and for a second, I felt like I was walking in a dream. "See you around, Charlotte," he said, hands in his pockets. "Maybe," I said, which was a lie. I knew damn well I'd be checking the shoreline every day like a lovesick pelican. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a text message dinging like an alarm bell. It was from my daughter. "Mom, we need to talk. Please answer." Another message popped up almost immediately. "We know what you did to the house. Dad's lawyer is threatening to sue you for damages. Please don't make this worse." Worse? Oh, sweet child. We weren't even at intermission. I typed back. "Tell your father to enjoy his lawn. He always wanted a golf course." I didn't wait for the response. I threw on a sundress, poured myself a mug of coffee, and stepped out onto the porch. The ocean was roaring that morning, big waves slapping the shore like they had an opinion. I breathed it in, letting the salt sting the inside of my throat. I wasn't running from my problems. I was repositioning myself. Strategic retreat, elegant demolition, new battlefield. Besides, revenge doesn't work well when you're sad. It requires a firm spine, a steady pulse, and a good breakfast. As I stood there, watching the gulls dive for fish, I noticed a figure down the beach. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, walking toward me with a fishing rod slung over his shoulder. Jack, of course. He stopped at the edge of my porch like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Mornin'," he said, face sunlit, eyes crinkling. "You're up early," I replied. "Fishermen always are." He lifted the bucket in his hand. "Thought you might like some fresh shrimp." I blinked. "Are you trying to feed me bait?" He grinned. "No, ma'am. Delicious, fresh, wild-caught shrimp. The kind people in cities pay too much money for." I took the bucket, peering at the plump, pink shrimp inside. "You realize this counts as a romantic gesture in these parts." "Good," he said simply. "Good?" Oh no, I wasn't prepared for good. For the next week, life settled into a strange, peaceful rhythm. Mornings, coffee on the porch. Afternoons, cleaning the little house, exploring the town, and taking long walks on the beach. Evenings, sometimes alone, sometimes with Jack. We didn't date, not officially, not intentionally. It was more like drifting, like two boats anchored near each other in the same small harbor. He'd show up with oysters or a bottle of wine. I'd invite him in for dinner when I made too much old habits die hard, and cooking for one felt like trying to clap with one hand. We talked about everything except the things that scared us: his wife's death, my husband's betrayal, the raw, tender edges we both hid. We avoided those topics the way people avoid stepping on broken seashells, carefully, instinctively. One night, halfway through a shared plate of fried fish, Jack said, "You know, you're different from the other summer folks." "I'm not a summer folk," I said. "I'm a refugee." "From the suburbs?" "From Betrayal." He leaned back, studying me like a puzzle. "You don't seem heartbroken." "Oh, I was," I said, sipping my iced tea. "For about 3 weeks I cried so much I could have salted the Atlantic myself. And now? Now I just want what's mine." "Honey," he chuckled, "didn't you already level everything that was his?" "That was the appetizer," I said with a smile. "The endery is personal." He blinked. "Personal how?" I tilted my head thoughtfully. "Do you believe in justice, Jack?" "Sure." "I don't," I said. "I believe in consequences." And oh, I had plans. While I was learning how to fry shrimp like a local and remembering how to sleep without nightmares, things were falling apart for Daniel. My daughter texted me screenshots of family group chats. My sister sent voice messages that sounded one scream short of a breakdown. My father left voicemails so long they sounded like soliloquies. Apparently, my ex-husband's young bride had not appreciated starting her married life as a houseless nomad. She had taken her clothes, her dog, her brand new ring, and moved back in with her parents. Within a week, she'd unfollowed him on social media. Within 2 weeks, she'd blocked his number. Within 3, she was spotted with a personal trainer named Raul, who had better abs and a better retirement plan. But the best part, Daniel was living in a motel. A motel with a broken ice machine and a questionable stain on the carpet. When I read that part of the message, I laughed so hard I almost dropped my phone into the kitchen sink. "Something funny?" Jack asked from the porch. "Oh sugar," I said, waving my hand, "you have no idea. But revenge is a ladder, and destroying the house was only the first rung. The next target on my list? My dear, loving family who'd betrayed me. I didn't want to ruin their lives, just restructure them. Step 1. My cousin had borrowed money from me years ago, fully expecting me to forget about it. I sent him a polite reminder with interest calculated. Interest calculated aggressively. Step 2. My sister used to rely on me to watch her grandkids every few Fridays. I texted her, I no longer offer babysitting services. Enjoy quality time with your family. Step 3. My daughter asked if I could help her cover half of her upcoming vacation costs. She'd grown used to that over the years, me paying when she fell short. I replied, vacation sounds lovely. I'm saving for a new roof. Have fun. Step 4. My son wanted advice on refinancing his house. I told him, ask your father. He seems to be the expert on starting over. Step 5. My father invited me to a charity gala. I told him, I don't attend events with people who toast my ex's infidelity, but have a wonderful evening. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did it feel like slipping into silk pajamas? Also yes. But life, for all its storms and scorched earth moments, has a funny habit of planting unexpected seeds. One evening, after a long walk along the shoreline, I found Jack sitting on my porch steps, holding 2 cups of something steaming. Tea, he said, handing me one. You looked like you needed it. I sat down beside him. Did I look sad? No, he said softly. You looked like someone who's been strong for too long. That did something to me. Something dangerous. I stared at the ocean, the moon glowing on the waves, and whispered, everybody left me. He turned to face me fully. Not everybody, Charlotte. The wind lifted my hair. The tea warmed my hands. The stars shimmered. And for the first time in months, I felt myself thaw a little. Just a little. I didn't know then how deep I'd fall, or that Daniel, my ex-husband with the motel carpet stains, was about to try clawing his way back into my life. But that's the thing about stories like mine, the plot always thickens right when you start to breathe again. I should have known peace was temporary. Any woman who has survived heartbreak knows tranquility is usually the deep inhale before life yanks the rug out, sends you tumbling, and then politely asks if you'd like to try again. The first sign of trouble came on a warm Thursday morning when I was trimming the bougainvillea by the front porch. I'd tied my hair up, put on an old straw hat, and was humming to myself like a woman who had absolutely no reason to suspect her past was crawling down the highway like a wounded possum. The seagulls were making a fuss overhead. The waves were slapping rhythmically against the sand. And then from somewhere behind me I heard tires crunching over shells, slow, hesitant, like the driver wasn't sure if he should keep going. I turned around just in time to see a dusty car I recognized far too well, Daniel's old black sedan. The same one I'd vacuumed 1,000 times, the same one I'd left spotless the day he asked me for a divorce. He stepped out wearing a wrinkled shirt and a look that said he hadn't slept properly in days. Weeks, maybe. Motel life will humble a man quicker than a sermon. Charlotte, he said, as if he were praying for mercy. I snipped another flower off the vine. What a surprise, I said flatly. I thought you'd be honeymooning. Oh wait, never mind. He flinched. Good. I'd been flinching on his behalf for decades. He looked around the porch like he was trying to place a memory. You moved back here? He asked. No, I said. I teleported. He sighed. Charlotte, can you be serious? I demolish my own house, I replied. If anyone earned the right not to be serious, it's me. He ran a hand over his face. I came to talk. No appointment, I said. No talk. I drove 3 hours. You should have driven 4, I said. Then you'd be in the ocean, and this would already be over. His eyebrows knitted together. Can you stop the jokes for 1 second? I set down my gardening shears and faced him fully, hands on hips, chin lifted, posture steady enough to withstand a hurricane. Say whatever you came to say, I told him, and say it fast. He swallowed, looked down at his shoes, looked back up at me with desperation written all over him. I'm sorry, he said. I raised an eyebrow. That's it? No, he said quickly. I mean, yes, that, but also, I made a mistake. You made several, I corrected. Want a list? He didn't laugh. Good. It wasn't funny. I don't know what I was thinking, he confessed. She was young, exciting, flattering, and I was stupid. You were predictable, I said. He stopped talking. You didn't trade me in for something better, Daniel. You traded me in for something younger. I stepped closer. There's a difference. And life showed you the receipt. He looked wounded. But I wasn't done. You know what hurts the most? I said. Not that you cheated. Not that you married her. Not even that you asked me to be your housekeeper. His face reddened. Good. He deserved to marinate in that shame. What hurts, I continued, is that you thought I would stay in that half-life you offered me. That after everything we built, you believed I had nowhere better to go. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. And then I added, you invited my family to your wedding. That wasn't my doing. Oh, don't be ridiculous, I snapped. Of course you wanted an audience. Men like you always want witnesses when you convince yourselves your new life is shinier than the old one. He deflated like a balloon. I lost everything, he whispered. Not everything, I said. You still have a motel room with a TV that probably shows only weather channels. He let out a broken sound, half laugh, half groan. Charlotte, I came here because I want us to try again. The silence that followed was so sharp you could have sliced fruit with it. I blinked slowly. Try again what? Our marriage. I actually laughed. Loudly. A full, head-thrown back laugh that startled the birds on the power line. You want me back? I asked incredulously. After cheating, lying, marrying a girl who needs her mother's permission to rent a car, and treating me like hired help. Yes, he said pathetically. I need you. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the motel shampoo on his collar. No, Daniel, I said softly. You need a maid, a mother, a therapist, a nurse, someone to fix the things you break and pretend it's love. His eyes glistened. I miss you. Of course you do, I said. Your rebound crashed and burned, and I'm the only adult woman who ever tolerated your nonsense. I reached out and gently patted his cheek. But I'm not your safety net. I'm not your doormat, and I'm certainly not your encore performance. He took another step toward me, voice pleading. Charlotte, please, I'm begging you. I tilted my head. Begging is unbecoming at your age. Then I pointed toward his car. Goodbye, Daniel. He didn't move. So I added, before you go, how's the lawn? He went pale. Right, I said cheerfully. Still empty. Like your new marriage. When he finally drove away slow, defeated, leaving a sad trail of dust, I felt the kind of lightness women pay gurus thousands of dollars to experience. Freedom. Real, solid, permanent freedom. But the universe is funny. It always sends balance. Because not 10 minutes after Daniel left, Jack walked up the beach holding two coffees. He spotted the tail end of the black sedan disappearing down the road. You expecting company? He asked, handing me a cup. No, I said, just taking out the trash. He gave me a slow, curious look. Everything okay? I sipped my coffee. Better than okay, he nodded, but his eyes lingered on my face. Searching, studying. You handled that like a woman who's done being stepped on, he said. Oh, I've retired from doormatting, I said. I'm strictly hardwood floors now. He burst out laughing. Then he sat on the porch railing, gaze serious. You know, he said, every time I see you, you're stronger than the time before. That's just the ocean air, I said. No, he replied, shaking his head. That's you. He said it simply, without expectation, without agenda, without trying to sweep me into some emotional whirlwind. Just truth. And it touched something inside me I didn't know was still capable of feeling touched. We stood there a moment too long, silence stretching between us like a tide. Then he nudged me lightly with his elbow. You busy tonight? He asked. Why? I replied. I thought maybe I'd take you out on the boat. Sunset on the water, good weather, calm seas. He paused. And because I like spending time with you. My breath caught. I didn't want to like that. I didn't want to feel a flutter. I didn't want to be the woman who lets one man hurt her and another man heal her. But maybe I wasn't that woman. Maybe I was becoming someone else. Someone who could accept something gentle after surviving something brutal. I smiled slowly. I'd like that, I said. And that night, on a quiet boat rocking gently under a violet sky, I learned two things. 1. Jack's hands were warm and steady on the steering wheel. 2. My heart, despite everything, hadn't died. It had just been waiting for someone worthy. But don't worry, the universe wasn't done throwing plot twists at me. Not by a long shot, because while I was falling for Jack in slow motion, an unexpected visitor was already on her way to ruin the peace I'd earned. And she was wearing heels. The night on Jack's boat had been, well, let's just call it dangerous. Not dangerous like sharks or storms or the boat failing in deep water, though Jack assured me he could survive anything the ocean threw at him. No. This was a different kind of danger. The kind that sneaks up slowly, wraps around your ribs, and makes you remember you used to have a heart before someone cracked it like a plate dropped on tile. We glided across the water under a sky that looked hand-painted. The air was warm, soft. Gentle waves lapped against the hull, and Jack talked in a low, warm voice about fishing seasons, coastal storms, and the way the moon changes the tide. I listened. I pretended not to stare at him when the light hit his jaw just right. I pretended not to feel something loosening inside me, some knot tied long ago. When he reached over and tucked a wind-blown strand of hair behind my ear, I felt it. That tiny spark. The one you think you'll never feel again when someone has betrayed you so deeply that your bones remember it. My breath caught, and he noticed. Oh yes, he noticed. But he didn't push, didn't lean in, didn't assume anything. He just smiled with that quiet confidence of a man who knows his worth and isn't desperate to prove it. Careful, he said softly. You're starting to trust me. I turned away so he wouldn't see the smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Reader, I was in trouble. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter, dangerously light, like the world had shifted an inch toward possibility. I threw on sandals, walked out to the porch, and there it was, her. A woman standing at the foot of my steps in bright red heels that absolutely did not belong on a sand-covered coastal driveway. Her hair sleek, dark, freshly blown out. Her lips bright as ripe cherries. Her dress the kind that screams I'm expensive but also on sale for men twice your age. It took me all of 3 seconds to recognize her. The secretary, the child bride, the 24-year-old mistake. Daniel's ex-wife after one day of marriage. Oh, she was even younger up close, smooth skin, bright eyes, the look of someone who hasn't yet learned how to hide disappointment. She crossed her arms. You're Charlotte, she said, as if she expected me to deny it. I sipped my coffee. Good morning to you too, Cinderella. She frowned. I'm not Cinderella. Well, you lost the house and the carriage, I said. The shoe's all you've got left, darling. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't funny, sweetheart, I replied. It's hilarious. But go on. She stomped one foot, sending a little cloud of sand around her expensive heel. I came here because I want answers. You came here in stilettos, I corrected. Which tells me you make poor decisions in general. Her nostrils flared. Did you demolish the house? Yes. Why? Because I own it. You destroyed a perfectly good home. No, I said, leaning casually against the porch railing. I destroyed a perfectly good illusion. She blinked. Then, suddenly, her chin trembled. Oh no, tears. I cannot handle tears from people I don't like before I've had breakfast. But then she said something that made me set my coffee down. He told me you were the bitter one, she whispered. He told me you were clinging, controlling, that you didn't appreciate him, and that he was suffocating in your marriage. I barked out a laugh so sharp it could have sliced a tomato. Of course he did, I said. A man cheating on his wife doesn't usually tell the new girl. By the way, she's wonderful and I'm an idiot. She shifted uncomfortably. He also said you were cold. I stared at her. Cold? I spent nearly 40 years keeping that man fed, clothed, and emotionally afloat. If anything, I was tropical humidity. Then she shrugged one shoulder. I believed him. He was older, successful, charming. Men are always charming when they're buying affection. I cut in. She hesitated. He said you let yourself go. My jaw dropped. Then I laughed again, this time with pure disbelief. He said what? That you stopped dressing up for him. Stop caring about your appearance. Honey, I said. I cooked, cleaned, raised 2 children, managed the home, supported his career, kept the house running, and nested 3 grandbabies under that roof. If he wanted a woman who wakes up every morning looking like an Instagram influencer, he should have married a ring light. Her cheeks reddened. She wasn't stupid, just young. Then she whispered, I was supposed to save him. Ah, there it was. The trap women keep falling into. I thought he needed me, she said. I thought I was helping him out of something painful. You were, I said gently, helping him out of accountability. She sank onto the porch step, heels sinking into the sand. He said you were crazy. Well, I admitted, I did demolish a house. That's at least lightly unhinged. She gave a shocked little laugh. Why are you joking about this? Because I survived it, I said. And humor is cheaper than therapy. She looked at me with something like aren't you mad at me? Should I be? Well, I took your husband. No, dear, I corrected softly. You took my problem. She blinked, then blinked again. And for the first time, I saw her not as a threat or a symbol or a betrayal, just as a very young woman who'd been fed a story by a seasoned storyteller. She stood abruptly. I shouldn't have come. You definitely shouldn't have worn those shoes, I added, but we all make mistakes. She hesitated at the edge of the porch. Where do I go now? Anywhere, I said. As long as it's forward. She nodded slowly. Goodbye, Charlotte. Goodbye, child. As she walked back to her car, wobbling like a baby deer, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The universe hates a quiet morning, because as soon as she drove away, I heard footsteps on the porch again. Jack, holding to muffins, looking amused. I passed a very angry-looking young woman in heels on my way up, he said. Friend of yours? No, I replied. That's my husband's ex-wife. He blinked. Then, very slowly, held out the muffins. You probably need both. I took them. Correct. He grinned at me, eyes warm, voice low. How do you always manage to make chaos look good? I shrugged. I moisturize. He laughed, stepped forward, and gently brushed a crumb off my lip. Danger, 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 danger. My heart fizzed like someone had shaken a soda bottle inside my chest. He leaned in not too close, just close enough that I felt the warmth of him and said, if you ever decide you want something real, I'm right here. Then he turned and walked back down the path, perfectly calm, absolutely certain, leaving me standing on the porch like I'd been struck by lightning. Oh, I was in trouble. But before I could even process that, my phone dinged. A message from my father. Charlotte, family meeting. Tonight, non-negotiable. I stared at it. Family meeting. The audacity. I'd burned down everything that made them comfortable, and now they wanted to talk. I smiled slowly. Oh, this was going to be good, because I wasn't the same Charlotte they betrayed. They wanted a meeting? Great. I was about to give them a reckoning. I suppose I should have been nervous. A family meeting, called by my father, attended by the same people who had cheerfully sat at my ex-husband's wedding while I was home crying into a mug of cold tea. But no, I was not nervous. I was thrilled. There is a peculiar joyous, strange electricity that comes over a woman who has finally realized she doesn't need anyone's approval, permission, apology, or validation. I had my own house, now a crooked little beach house, but mine. I had my own life. I had dignity, clarity, and a rapidly developing crush on a fisherman. And these people wanted a meeting? I put on lipstick, not subtle lipstick, red, scarlet, the shade that says I am not the same woman you betrayed, and I dare you to forget it. If they were coming to my sanctuary, they were going to meet the new Charlotte, the one who doesn't flinch. They arrived in a caravan of hypocrisy: my father's luxury car, my sister's SUV, my cousin's pickup. My son and daughter came separately, guilt apparently not strong enough to carpool. They filed out onto the sand like they were arriving at a tense backyard barbecue. Instead of the consequence of their actions, Charlotte, my father said, stepping forward with the gravity of a man who'd chaired many a board meeting. We need to discuss recent events. Do we? I said sweetly, folding my arms. Because from where I'm standing, everything's already been resolved. My sister huffed. You destroyed the family estate. No, I corrected. I destroyed my house, not the family's. No one ever visited unless they wanted food or a babysitter. My daughter stepped forward, arms crossed. Mom, you're being, if you say, dramatic. I said calmly, I will push you into the ocean. And you know I can. You were a small baby. She shut her mouth. Good girl. Then my son tried. Mom, Dad says I don't care what Dad says. He blinked like someone had slapped him with a fish. I gestured toward the little porch. Come on, if we're doing this, we might as well sit. I don't negotiate while standing. They all gathered clumsy, awkward, shifting in their seats like kindergartners in trouble. I sat opposite them, back straight, chin up, absolutely unshakable. Like a queen holding court at Sea Glass Cottage. My father cleared his throat. Charlotte, the destruction of the house has caused issues, financial ones. Not my issue, I said. Moving on. Your sister and cousin believe you acted out of anger. I acted out of intent, I corrected. Very clear intent. My sister tried to smile like we were still friends. Charlotte, we get it, okay? You were hurt. But, no. I said sharply, you don't get it. If you did, you wouldn't have gone to that wedding. That shut her up. My cousin opened his mouth. I held up a hand. Don't. You owe me money. His mouth closed. My daughter sighed dramatically. Mom, we didn't want to hurt you. You just accidentally coordinated outfits and carpooled to your father's wedding to a 24-year-old girl while I was grieving, I said. Happens to the best of families. My son rubbed his temple. We thought Dad needed support. Oh, he did, I said. He needed emotional support, financial support, and apparently a demolition crew. My father leaned forward. Charlotte, this behavior isn't healthy. I smiled at him, slowly, dangerously. Dad, I said, the moment I fired all of you from taking advantage of me was the healthiest moment of my life. He opened his mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. Let me make this simple, I continued. If you want to be in my life, fine, but you come in honestly, you apologize, you take responsibility, and if we don't, my sister snapped. Then you get the same thing Daniel got, I said. A goodbye. Silence. Salty, humid, delicious silence. Then my daughter whispered, Mom, we're sorry. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who cried when she skinned her knee and crawled into my lap. Something inside me softened, but not enough to forget. My son followed. Yeah, Mom, we should have been there for you. Then my sister, Charlotte. We messed up, my cousin muttered. I'll pay the money. My father, old, stiff, stubborn as weathered driftwood, took his time. Then he said, Charlotte, I was wrong. The words sounded painful for him, like his tongue was allergic to humility. I didn't forgive them right away. Forgiveness is not a vending machine. You don't put in an apology and get absolution. But I nodded. Good, now we can start. Relief washed over them like rain on parched ground. Then I added, however, you're all on probation. My daughter blinked. Probation? Yes, I nodded. Emotional probation. One misstep, one betrayal, one insult, one whiff of Daniel, and you're benched. They looked at each other, unsure whether to laugh. My father didn't laugh. Fair, he said. Well, wonders never cease. After they left, awkward hugs, hesitant smiles, promises to call. I sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea and watched the sun sink toward the water. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I felt settled, like something heavy I didn't realize I was carrying had finally been set down. Then I heard footsteps on the sand. Jack. He didn't come with muffins or coffee or fish this time. He came with his hands in his pockets and a look that told me he'd seen my entire family parade down the beach like a dysfunctional duck march. You survived the stampede? He asked. Barely, I said. He chuckled and took a seat beside me, elbows resting on his knees. You handled them, he said, admiration thick in his voice. Hell, you tamed them. I don't tame anyone, I said, sipping my tea. I just finally stopped letting them pull my strings. He nodded, eyes thoughtful. Most people don't learn that lesson until it's too late. And you? I asked. When did you learn it? He looked out at the horizon. When my wife got sick, I realized I'd spent half my life trying to be who everyone needed and not who I actually was. After she died, I needed to figure out who I was without someone leaning on me. A quiet settled over us, soft, understanding, not uncomfortable. You know, he added, it's nice to lean on someone who can stand on their own defeat. Are you calling me stable? I asked, scandalized. He laughed. I'm calling you strong. Oh, good. Stable is boring. He glanced at me. You're many things. Boring isn't one of them. My heart fluttered, not because of romance or loneliness or need. Because for the first time in decades, a man saw me as whole, not broken, not incomplete, not someone to fix or mold or use, just me. We watched the sun disappear into the ocean, the last rays glowing warm against our skin. Jack leaned slightly closer, not touching, just near enough that I felt the heat of him. Charlotte, he said quietly, do you know what comes next for you? I smiled. Yes, I said, I do. What's that? I turned to him, my voice steady, confident, full of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I'm going to live, I said simply, not survive, not endure, live. He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that sinks into your bones. Good, he murmured. I'd like to be part of that. He didn't reach for my hand. He didn't pull me into an embrace. He just sat beside me, steady as the tide. And somehow, that was more intimate than any kiss could have been. But peace, true peace, was still a step away. Because just when I began to settle into this new life, a shadow returned. A shadow with a familiar face. A shadow that refused to stay buried. Daniel. And this time, he didn't come alone. No, this time, he brought trouble. I always knew Daniel wasn't done. Men like him never leave quietly. They return like bad weather, loud, inconvenient, and convinced the world owes them sunshine. But I did not expect him to show up 2 weeks later with a lawyer in tow, marching across the sand like they were invading Normandy. I saw them from my porch. Daniel in another wrinkled shirt, his lawyer a thin, sunburned man in a suit that was losing a battle with the humidity. And behind them, the 24-year-old ex-bride herself, clutching her purse like a flotation device. And Lord help me, she was wearing heels again. In sand. This child would not survive a week in coastal life. I took a long sip of my iced tea. They approached my steps like a sad parade. Charlotte, Daniel began. No, I said. Turn around. Go home. The lawyer stepped forward, clearing his throat. Mrs. Wallace, miss, I corrected. I divorced that name. He blinked, thrown off. Miss Charlotte, my client is seeking compensation for his lawn? I asked. Because that's all he has left. The lawyer coughed, flustered. For damages, emotional distress, loss of property. I laughed so hard I had to wipe my eyes. Oh, sweetheart, I own that property. I demolished my half. Perfectly legal. Daniel clenched his fists. You ruined my life. I improved it, I said. Now you don't have to pretend to be a devoted husband. You can be exactly who you are, a lonely man who proposed to someone young enough to be his granddaughter and got left by breakfast. The ex-bride winced. The lawyer coughed again. Daniel glared. You have to fix this, he demanded. Help me rebuild. Or pay for half. Absolutely not, I said. You told me during the divorce you would never take the house from me. That's not, but I told you, I continued, that I would. He froze. Then I delivered the blow. Daniel, I didn't destroy our house because of anger. I destroyed it because it was the only way to stop carrying the weight of a life you abandoned long before you left. He glanced helplessly at the lawyer. She can't do this. She can't just walk away after everything. Oh, but Daniel, I said softly. I walked away the minute I realized I'd rather live in a crooked beach shack alone than share a mansion with a man who made me feel invisible. Silence fell. Only the ocean moved, waves rolling in like applause. The ex-bride stepped forward suddenly. Daniel, she whispered, I told you this was a bad idea. He turned to her, pleading. I need you to back me up. She held up her hands. No, or done. Fully done. I just came because I wanted to. I don't know. See her again. See me? She turned to me, eyes unexpectedly sincere. I want to apologize, she said, for everything. I didn't understand what was happening. I don't know what I thought. That you could fix him? I asked gently. She nodded, embarrassed. You can't fix a man by becoming what he wants, I said. You'll only lose yourself in the process. Her lip trembled. I already did. I touched her shoulder lightly. Find who you are before you try to be anything for anyone else. She swallowed hard, nodded, and turned away. She walked down the beach barefoot, carrying her heels in her hand, finally learning. Daniel looked at her retreating figure, then at me. You turned her against me, he said bitterly. No, I replied. You did that. I'm just the narrator. I pointed toward his car. Leave, Daniel. You don't get to stand on the shore I rebuilt and demand pieces of the life you broke. His face crumpled not in sadness, but in fury. Then he left. He left with his wrinkled shirt, his cheap motel shampoo smell, his empty hands, and his lawyer trailing behind him like regret. And that, truly, was the last time Daniel Wallace ever stood on my sand. After they were gone, I let myself breathe. Really breathe. Salt air, sunlight, freedom. That's when I felt a presence behind me. Not ominous, not surprising. Jack. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He simply placed a weathered, warm hand on my shoulder. You good? He asked softly. I turned, meeting his eyes. Strong, steady, kind. The three things I had never truly had from a man. I think, I said, exhaling deeply. I'm better than good. Jack smiled. Then I have something to show you. He took my hand just for a moment, testing the weight of it in his. I let him. My fingers curled instinctively around his. We walked down the beach to his boat. Get in, he said. Why? Because, he said, I've been waiting until you were done with your storms before I gave you this. My heart fluttered. Jack, what are you planning? He didn't answer. He only helped me aboard and steered us out past the dock, into open water. The ocean was calm. A soft breeze threaded through my hair. Sunlight glittered like diamonds on the surface. Then he stopped the engine. Look, he said, nodding toward the shore. I turned, and my breath caught. We were far enough out that the mainland was just a soft line of color, but sea glass cottage stood out. White walls, blue shutters, gently glowing in the late afternoon sun. It's beautiful, I whispered. It's yours, he said quietly. Your new beginning, your clean slate. My eyes prickled. He stepped closer, not too close, just enough. You know, he said, the tide brings things back, always has. But sometimes it brings things you didn't know you needed. I looked at him, at this man with salt in his hair, wind on his clothes, warmth in his eyes. How do you always know what to say? I whispered. I don't, he said softly. I just know what I feel. My breath caught. And then finally he reached out and brushed his fingers down my jaw. Slow, careful, like he was touching something precious. Charlotte, he said in a voice that wrapped around my spine, may I? I nodded, and he kissed me. Not like a man claiming, not like a man taking, not like a man rushing, but like a man honoring something. The kiss tasted of salt, sunlight, and new beginnings. When we finally pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. I'm not broken, I whispered. His hands cupped my cheeks gently. I never thought you were, he said. We drifted on the water until the sun dipped low, painting the world in gold. When he steered us back to shore and walked me to my porch, he kissed my cheek, slow and lingering. I'll see you tomorrow, Charlotte, he murmured. Tomorrow? I repeated. I stepped inside Sea Glass Cottage, closed the door, pressed my back to it, and smiled. A real smile, a full smile, the first in years. Because my life wasn't over, it wasn't ruined, it wasn't destroyed, it had only just begun. But you and I both know it's not really an ending. Not for Charlotte. She's too strong for that, too sharp, too alive. This was simply the end of her old life, and the beginning of the one she chose.